Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about magic, Commander, and anything else while I try and navigate this whole mental health thing that I don't have. Today, let's just rip the band aid off and talk about the most recent bans in Commander. 4 cards were banned. The first one being Mana Crypt, second one being Jeweled Lotus, the third one being Dockside Extortionist, and the fourth one being Nadu Winged Wisdom. Let's start with the personally. Do I think these were bad bans? And my answer to that is no, I don't think they're bad bans. I think how they handled it going into the bans could have been done better. And I wish they would have talked to the CAG before issuing all of these bans, because I'm pretty sure they would have given them the feedback of, hey, if you ban all 4 of these at once, you're probably going to generate a lot of hate. And that's what we saw happen. Now, I will be the first one to say I do not condone sending threats to anyone who was involved in this. And I should not have to see one of my friends being personally attacked. So, with that said, everyone take a breath and calm down. The bans went into effect. We will regulate and find new ways to do degenerate stuff. It's what we always do. That said, personally, I think if they had started with 2 of the cards, let the format kind of settle in, and then reevaluate after that, instead of just completely trying to take CDH out at the knees. Are they the only people that are affected by this? No, but the majority of people that are affected by this are going to be the people in CEDH. And the thing I keep seeing online, and even the RC alluded to it, is how Sol Ring is still legal, but now, Mana Crypt is not. And I know you have to go really deep into the ether to find it, but back in the day, Sheldon mentioned that when Commander was picked up by Wizards, one of the few requirements they had was that every precon had to have Sol Ring in it, because Sol Ring would always be legal. It will never be banned. And I feel like people either A, don't know that, or B, forgot that. There is no banning of Sol Ring. I get where people aren't happy with it being like an auto-include in every deck, but that was kind of the point of it being in the format. So, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It's Sol Ring. Commander wouldn't be Commander without Sol Ring. That's the crux of it. Those cards were banned. Do I think they were bad bans? No. Do I think it was handled improperly? Yes, I do. There, that's it. I'm going to take a quick break, and then after that, I don't know, I'm going to talk about a deck. It's what I do. I'll be right back. And we're back. Now, I did take a minute to just calm down. And recently, I was going through decks that I have built but are kind of on the back burner because maybe they didn't play the way I wanted to, or maybe they just didn't feel like they came together right. And sometimes it's just I needed to put them aside for a little bit because my brain wasn't working the right way. Well, one of those decks that I have is Myril, Shield of Archive. She is 3 and a white for a 3/4 human soldier. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. And whenever Myril, Shield of Archive attacks, create X 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control. So, yeah, I built this back, I want to say like right after Brothers War came out. And then I put it aside to do something else, and I never got back to it. So I got back to it. And since I haven't got to it for a while, there are some things that I definitely want to add to it. So I'm going to go over some of the stuff that's in the deck, and then I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that I don't have in the deck, but I'm looking to add to the deck. So, starting off, the main thing we need to know is people are going to want to kill Myril. So we want to protect her with, lots of things. But a few of them also kind of play into other stuff. The main one here being Eldrazi Monument. 5-mana artifact, creatures you control get +1/+1, have flying and indestructible. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. If you can't, you sacrifice the monument. So I don't know if you know this. She makes a bunch of 1/1s. What do we want to do with 1/1s? We want to give them flying, indestructible, and +1/+1. And then they hit twice as hard. We also have Bastion Protector in there, which is 2 and a white for a 3/3 human soldier. It gives your commander +2/+2 and indestructible. And that's probably the best 2 that are in the deck, but then there's also a conditional one. That's Stalwart Pathlighter, 2 and a white for a 3/1 human soldier with vigilance. And it has a Coven ability. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And yeah, from there I looked into, what we call lords. So lords are creatures that give an ability to similarly typed creatures. Things like Adaptive Automaton, which is a lord for any type. 3 mana for a 2/2 construct. As it enters the battlefield, choose creature type. It is the chosen creature type in addition to its other types, and other creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. So in our case, soldiers. This is quite famous among soldiers, as a lot of soldiers give buffs to other soldiers, things like Field Marshal. 1 white for a 2/2 human soldier. Other soldiers you control get +1/+1 and have first strike. He's very good. We have Captain of the Watch. 4 white for a 3/3 human soldier with vigilance. Other soldiers you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. And whenever Captain of the Watch enters the battlefield, you put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. So that one in particular is good with Myril, because if you have Myril, you play Captain of the Watch. So even if you don't have any other soldiers when you attack, you now have 5 soldiers when you attack. It's, an army in a can. Getting into some of the other, what we call lords in here, we have very, there's a lot of variation in the way the lords work in this deck. So we have things like Valiant Veteran, which is 1 and a white for a 2/2 core soldier. Other soldiers you control get +1/+1. And for 3 white, you can exile the veteran from your graveyard to put a counter on each soldier you control. So that one is a lord on the battlefield and then has utility in the graveyard. Archetype of Courage is 1 white for a 2/2 human soldier with creatures you control have first strike, and creatures your opponents control lose first strike and can't have or gain first strike. In that same vein, we have Rock's Pikemaster, which is 2 white for a 3/3 Rhino Soldier with First Strike, and other soldiers you control have First Strike. Now, in addition to Lords, we are also running some Anthems. Anthems being non-creatures that kind of do the same thing. And in this case, we have several, but I'm only going to talk about a couple of them. The first one is Obelisk of Erd. It's 6 mana for an artifact with Convoke. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +2/+2. The main reason I added this is because it has Convoke, and if I need my mana up for other stuff, as long as I have 6 creatures, this is just free. Now, in that same vein, we have Mobilization, which is 2 and a white for an enchantment. Soldier creatures you control have Vigilance, and you can pay 3 to put a 1/1 white soldier creature token onto the battlefield. So again, has a value, can make more tokens to help Myrill make more tokens. Pretty simple, right? Now, the last 2 of these that I really want to talk about, the first one being Coat of Arms. Now, Coat of Arms is a 5 mana artifact. With each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. So, in the example, it talks about how if you have 3 goblins and 2 are warriors and 1 is a shaman, they each get +2/+2 because they all share the goblin type. In our case, they're all going to share soldier type. It doesn't matter if they're a human soldier or anything else. They get +1 for each other creature on our battlefield. And normally, I'm not the biggest fan of something like this, but it's kind of our alpha shot because of Myrill's ability to keep people from activating abilities and casting spells on our turn. We play this the turn we're going to try and decimate the board. And that's kind of the same with our other one, which is Cathar's Crusade. So Cathar's Crusade is 3 white for an enchantment, and it says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. The funny thing is, with Myrill's ability, they all enter at the same time. So if you play this and attack with Myrill, and then dump however many tokens into play, you put that many counters on each creature. And if this survives, you do it again the next turn. So, both good ways to, end a game. Next up, I want to talk about just some mana reduction stuff. We don't have a ton of them, but the 2 we do have are pretty good. The first one being Bellyrush Banneret. 1 and a white for a 2/1 Kithkin soldier, and it says Kithkin spells and soldier spells you play cost 1 less to play. That said, I think this deck has maybe 2 other Kithkins in it, or maybe it's only 1, and I don't think I can reduce their cost at all, so but the -1 to soldiers is pretty good. Speaking of that, we have Daru Warchief, which is a 1/1 soldier. I do believe it's been eroded to a human soldier, but I'd have to check Scryfall or Gatherer to confirm that. Regardless, it's a 1/1. It says soldier spells you play cost 1 less to play, and soldiers you control get +1/+2. So it's a cost reduction, and it's a lord. Next up, let's talk about Prava of the Steel Legion. 2 and a white for a 1/4 cat soldier. As long as it's your turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+4, and for 3 and a white, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, and it has partner. So this is in here because, well, we're going to make a lot of tokens. But also she can facilitate making tokens if, well, true to mono white, we kind of hit that lull of, oh, I don't have anything to do. I guess I'll just sink my mana into this mana sink. So that's the main reason she's there. Next up, we have Siege Veteran. 2 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And whenever another non-token soldier you control dies, you make a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So, throws counters around to make my roll harder to block, and also, if something I control dies that's not a token, I replace it with a token. Next up, we have Catapult Master, which is probably the weirdest lord we have in the deck. 3 white for a 3/3 human soldier, but you can tap 5 untapped soldiers you control to exile target creature. Note that this does not say you have to tap him to use this ability. This also gets around Summoning Sickness because you're tapping it to his ability, not to one of their own abilities. So, when you attack with my roll, say you make 10 tokens, you can just exile 2 creatures before blockers. It's really stupid. Okay, so we can't talk about a mono-white soldier deck without talking about Odric. That said, we are running the 2 that we can. So Odric, Master Tactician, 2 white for a 3/4 human soldier with first strike. Whenever he and at least 3 other creatures attack, you choose which creatures block this combat and how those creatures block. Now, the downside is I don't have a ton of ways to give haste. That said, if I get to attack with him, my roll, and any other combination of creatures, they are not getting blocked. And then we have the keyword soup guy, and that's Odric Lunarch Marshal. 3 and a white for a 3/3 human soldier. At the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. The same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. Now, in this deck, I'm fairly certain the 3 I can get are the first strike, vigilance, and indestructible, because I have things that can give, like, Myrel indestructible. That's basically it. I think I have 1 creature with flying and lifelink, and yeah, I think that's about it. So that's things that are currently in the deck. I want to talk about some things that aren't in the deck that I think I should put in the deck. And first up on that list is actually a couple of things from Bloomburrow. The first one being Patchwork Banner. 3 mana artifact. When it enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, and then it also is a mana rock. Taps to add 1 mana of any color. The other one from Bloomburrow is 3 Tree City. It is a legendary land. When it enters, choose a creature type. It taps for a colorless, or you can pay to tap it, choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to the number of creatures you control of the chosen type. So just never have any mana problems. Now, moving into a couple of creatures that aren't in the deck that I would like to see in the deck. The first one is the Defiler of Faith. He is 3 white for a 5/5 Phyrexian human. He has vigilance, and as an additional cost to cast permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. White permanent spells. Those spells cost a white less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of white mana you pay. And whenever you cast a white permanent spell, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Now, I do have a lot of colorless spells in here because there are a lot of mana rocks and stuff. So it might be risky slotting this in, but at the same time, it is a way to reduce costs. Now, the next one I'm looking at, honestly, there's a lot I'm looking at, but the next one I want to talk about is the Moonshaker Cavalry. It is 5 white for a 6/6 Spirit Knight. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and +X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. It is the white Critterhoof. The only downside is it's a knight and not a soldier. That's really just the only thing I have to say there. And then the other creature I want to talk about is one that I'm surprised I didn't have in here, because I know I have this card floating around in multiple places, and that's Mirror Entity. It's 3 and a white for a 1/1 shapeshifter with changeling, and for X, until end of turn, creatures you control have base power and toughness XX and gain all creature types. It can just turn everything I have into soldiers and everything else, but also just make them all 10/10s if I don't have anything better to do with my mana. But moving away from creatures, there were a few spells I was looking at that are instant speed. The first one being the great ender of games, Akroma's Will. 3 and white for an instant. Choose one. If you control your commander, as you cast a spell, choose both. Creatures you control gain flying, vigilance, double strike until end of turn. Or creatures you control gain lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors till end of turn. Speaking of protection, another card I don't have in here that I should have in here is Flawless Maneuver. 2 and a white instant. If you control your commander, you can cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. After that, we have Clever Concealment. 2 white for an instant with Convoke. Any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. Now, you think this isn't great with tokens, but since they changed the rules on phasing, this works great with tokens. Another one I want to add, simply because of the name, is from the Warhammer 40k decks, and it's the And They Shall No Fear. It is 1 and a white for an instant. Choose a creature type, creature you control of the chosen type. Get +1/+0 and gain indestructible till end of turn. It's just another one-shot, protect my board from a board wipe type thing. But I love the name. There was a few sorceries I was looking at that I wanted to possibly put up in this deck. The first one being Finale of Glory. X white for sorcery. You make X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with vigilance. If X is 10 or more, you also create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. So this is just a way to, army in a can. Yeah, that's all I got to say about it. Another one that does this is Deploy to the Front. 5 white for a sorcery. Put X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens out the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. Yeah, it does what it needs to do, what we want it to do. But a new one from Duskmourn that I was looking at is Split Up. 1 white for a sorcery. Choose one. Destroy all tapped creatures. Destroy all untapped creatures. So we cast this in our main phase, get rid of some blockers, and then send everything. It's really fun. The other one I was looking at, the other board wipe I was looking at is Ravnica at War. 3 and a white for a sorcery. Exile all multicolored permanents. Now, does this hit everything new? But it is exiling a bunch of stuff. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could look at things like Mass Calcify or Vanquish the Horde, but I don't really like running more than 3 board wipes in a deck anymore. I just don't like games going for 5 hours at this point. Anyway, the last card I wanted to talk about that I don't have in here, that I definitely want to have in here, is Akroma's Memorial. Akroma's Memorial is a 7 mana artifact, and it just says creatures you control have flying, first strike, Vigilance, Trample, Haste, Protection from black and red. It is one of the few ways in mono white you can give your creatures haste. And that's why I want it. Not that the ones that she makes when she attacks won't be able to attack because we'd be past the declare attacker step. But I digress. Another thing that would probably be good in here is Dolmen Gate. 2 mana artifact, prevent all damage that would be dealt to attack, all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. And I think I have rambled long enough. This is a little longer than I normally go. And I think that's what I'm going to call it. So I will see you next time. To everyone giving grief to Olivia and the other members of the Rules Committee, knock it off. And we will be back next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.